all the vampires walking through the valley. Move west down Ventura Boulevard, and all the bad boys standing in the shadows. All the good girls holding broken hearts, and I'm free, free falling, and I'm free, free falling, and I'm 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 free falling, now I'm free falling, now I'm free falling, and I'm free falling, and I'm free falling.
Hey guys, welcome to Collective. It's a little after 5 on Sunday night. That means it's time for our live liturgy. With me here on the couch, as always, our prophet in residence, Fred. How you feeling?
I'm feeling better.
Okay, we had a bit of a scare this week. Freddie came down with a bit of a sniffle after the service last Sunday. We played everything right, got multiple tests, everything came back negative. So
Negative.
hopefully it's sort of the seasonal sinus infection thing. Also with us on the couch tonight, Heather. How's it going?
It's going great, thank you.
Well, you're a terrible liar, but I'm glad you're here anyway.
Well, it's going great now. It's been a rough week, as
has,
a
right?
lot of you out there know. But thanks to our wonderful community, things are looking up. So
Yeah, and it's something Heather and I have shared in the past year and a half or two with a near-death experience a bit over a year ago now, right? How difficult it is. You grow up and you realize as an adult that you've never learned to ask for help. And so Heather was able to ask for some help in the community to rally around this week. But one of the things that impacted me, and I didn't learn this until a few years ago in recovery, is how important it is to give other people the opportunity to help in order to help them. And my first thought was, we need to get Heather in on the couch to contribute, because this is part of the way that you heal and part of the way that you contribute to us being well. So, hey Dan, hey Jim, hey Wendy, hey Jay, hey Dan and Susan, Vaughn, Kenny, so good to see you. Really good to see you all, to see our friends here. Welcome, welcome. Let me just run through a couple of the things that we have coming up. You can sign up for the weekly. You can get connected to a lot going on in the life of Collective at wearecollectivechurch.com. If you're online, we're already chatting on Facebook. Definitely feel free to chat there. That's a little bit where kind of the social life hangs out now. But we've been for the last few weeks really trying to push you to check out the YouTube page. So you can subscribe at youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. You get better quality video. There is chat interaction. I think some people only hang out on the YouTube and chat over there. I think David Malinowski probably is over there. So if you want to start migrating that way, feel free to do it. Eventually, that's where everything will be. But for now, we'll hang out on Facebook.
and Ben,
Yes, hit me.
on that point, a lot of us have smart TVs now, and a lot of them have YouTube on there. So rather than watching it on your phone or your computer, you can watch on the big TV in the living room. So that's another option with YouTube.
Yeah, great point. We have heard from a few people. I think very often I think about somebody watching this, usually either listening on their phone or like watching it at a computer. But yeah, the range now of like seeing it on a screen this big to being able to just watch it and pull it up at your house. But I know a handful of people watch it that way. Usual stuff this week, Monday night yoga. We're still trying to figure out what yoga is going to be like now that we can sort of maybe do some stuff back in person, social distance, but the numbers are going crazy. So we're going to keep an eye on that. For now, that'll be on Zoom. Tuesday, our regular Work of the People is going to be 4 o'clock. Those have been going really well. That's been super fun. So come over for that, 4 o'clock on Tuesday. There will be a Zoom link and a Facebook event for that. And then Thursday, as usual, I know Dan Hensley is already in, loving the Tom Petty music. So Dan, if you would share in the Facebook, as usual, what's coming up for Collective Cares this Thursday at 5:30, and whether or not that's going to be online or hybrid and all those great details. We talked last week about rolling out, and I unfortunately don't have branding. I was hoping to have it for tonight, but I didn't get it all together. But we're going to launch a gallery / series in the month of December called Honest Advent. And we need a lot of help to pull it off. So we're starting to narrow in on what exactly we need. So we've got a schedule of what's looking like 9 dates that we're going to be open to the public in the month of December. We'll need people to help work the door, check to make sure everybody's COVID safe, if you want to learn how to be a docent and give a guided tour. But we'll need people to do it, especially if we want to do it safely. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. We're going to have more direct asks for people. I talked to some people this weekend who I know are interested in participating in a bunch of different ways. So definitely stay tuned. That stuff should come out. I know I promised you guys an email last week. I don't have any excuses. I just didn't do it. I just didn't get to it. There was a moment where I thought, you know what, I'm not going to get to the email. Maybe I should just do a Facebook Live and just say everything I was going to get in the email, and then they know, but I decided not to. Hopefully this week I'll get to an email. Then you can connect with some of these things that we told you about. But there's lots of ways that you can be involved. We're working hard on our end to make that easier for you to get connected to those things. But for now, thanks for being with us. Thanks especially if you're with us live right now. Your presence does make us who we are. So welcome to Collective. Either of you want to do the community statement? Anyone feeling strong?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Heather, go for it.
Let me pull it up.
Or if you want to read it off here, I can zoom it huge. How about that?
Oh, yeah, okay. So we value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, representing an intergenerational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, to ask good questions, to articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language, because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Thank you. I got to share this just because this is so perfect. If you're wondering like what is Collective or why Collective, if you haven't been around long, I know that's not most of you. I know most of the people that tune in are people who've been around forever. But if by some chance you tuned in tonight and you're like, why Collective? What's Collective? I want to let you know my experience as the person who started this whole thing, participating in the liturgy and having the line that Heather read, lifelong followers of Jesus. As Heather's reading this on my screen, I'm also seeing in the chat box from Dan Hensley, what blows your skirt up? And so I just think the juxtaposition of lifelong followers of Jesus and what blows your skirt up, welcome to Collective. This is who we are. Tonight we're going to sort of pause, as we very often do, and sort of cleanse the spiritual palate with some silence and some breathing. And as usual, we're going to share a drone video, and this is going to be another one, as we've said in the past. Just allow the drone video maybe to serve for you as a metaphor for your interior life and your interior perspective. And take this 3 minutes to get silent and to breathe and to just allow your perspective to float over your interior landscape. What happened this week? If you can silence the chatter regarding what you think about it, enough that you can sit with how you feel, that's where we want to ask you to go. So find some silence, connect with some time and some space to survey your inner landscape. Without expectations, without shoulds. You're not attempting to get anything from this. You're just reconnecting with what is, with who you are, with what you are. So let's float over that landscape. We'll sit silently together for about 3 minutes.
sit and wonder why, babe. If you don't know by now, ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. We'll never do somehow. When your rooster crows at the break of dawn, look out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason that I'm traveling on. Don't think twice, it's alright. Ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. That light I never know. Ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. I'm on the dark side of the road. Start wishing for something I could do or say. Try to make you change my mind and say you never did too much talking anyway. Don't think twice, it's alright. Ain't no use in calling out my name, gal, like you never did before. Ain't no use in calling out my name, gal, 'cause I can't hear you anymore. I'm thinking, wondering, walking down the road. Once loved a woman, a child, I'm told. Gave her my heart, but she wanted my soul. Don't think twice, it's alright. So long, honey, baby, where I'm bound, I can't tell. But goodbye's too good a word, babe. I'll just say fare thee well. I say you treated me unkind, could've done better, but I don't mind. You just kinda wasted my precious time. Don't think twice, it's alright. Don't think twice, it's alright.
Yeah, all right, a little Bobby Dylan for you there. All right, and we have a reading tonight, and Heather's going to do this for us. You sure? You got it? Okay. Lay it on us.
Go down a bit. There we go. So tonight's reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, starting at verse 23. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I am referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? So, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved.
Clear as mud there.
Yeah.
Wow, that middle part, huh? I'm not going to promise you that we're going to get back to that and that I'm going to make that make any sense. But that's the text that we're going to wrestle with. Thank you guys again for being here. Thank you, Heather, for interrupting me. And I want to give you guys the opportunity to contribute to this. So what I've got are some ideas, and I'll sort of explain the framework, but I want this to be a conversation, and Heather and I are already really excited about where some of this may go, but then we want to invite you all to be a part of that on the Zoom as well. Hey Waylon, how's it going? Hey Rick, hey David, hey Marilyn. We got a bunch of folks in here. Love you guys, missing a lot of you. Hey Katie Sarah also, good deal, awesome. A lot of people saying it's good to see you.
Thank you, everybody.
It is good to see you.
I can see you through here. So
yes.
So it's good to see you
You've
guys
got this
too.
portal to your eyes
Yep.
and into your souls. So let me catch you up. Where should I start? There was an election recently. Right.
Who won?
You know what?
Oh, okay.
For many people, the election's over.
Okay.
For many people, the election's over. Part of what we said last week is that such division and animosity and fear and hatred and gaslight, I mean, all the just disgusting. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 10, Dan, sorry. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 10 starting in 23. Thank you for that. So part of what we wanted to do, we sort of, this is, starting 3 weeks out from the election, we were like, man, what are we going to do? Because we're not going to know the results of the election right away. So what is it that we say? And part of where we landed was, what are the unconditional convictions that we ought to be practicing regardless of who's in power? And we tend to think of these as binaries that are red and blue, right? Whether the world is red or blue, as if that's even possible. What are these unconditional practices, these unconditional convictions? And we decided to use this quote that came to me through John Wesley. He attributes it to St. Augustine. And the real quote is attributed to somebody else. Jim shared an article last week, I can't remember. But the quote is, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity. And so last week we sort of dipped a toe in the water with the idea of both essentials and unity, and the acknowledgement that we have no agreement on what the essentials are, and we certainly don't have unity. Sermon number 1 for this week. So we did in essentials, unity. Next week we'll do in all things, charity. This week we're talking about in non-essentials, in areas of disagreement, in places where we agree that they're disputable, that there's not a clear whatever. It's a matter of preference. The quote says, with disputable matters, with non-essentials, liberty, which is interesting. Before we get to liberty, the first sermon is this, and this was, I'm sorry, Brandon, I know I touched my mic, I won't do it again. This was peace for me, like a genuine experience of peace when I realized this week. Sermon number 1, there are such things as non-essentials. There are such things in your life as non-essentials. And you might fight it for the first few seconds, but I want you to start thinking of these things as you think about what you do day to day. Some things, if you hear nothing else tonight, and I think this is very good news, this has been very liberating for me this weekend, some things are not essential. Some things are not essential. If you want to name in the chat, what are some things that are not essential in your life? And I know you're immediately like, that bullshit. Yes, I'm talking about that. Whatever the stuff is that you're immediately like, let it go. I don't need that. I don't need the drama. I don't need the guilt trips. I don't need any more political conversations. Whatever that is for you right now, what are the things in your life that you're currently having to deal with, but you know deep down these are not essential? These aren't essential things. Because I think before we get to liberty, we have to form our posture towards the world, which this is another word for faith, to form our posture towards the world, because part of what we're doing in faith is we're living as if. And so I'm asking us to form our posture towards the world, living as if there are many, many, many things in your life that are not essential. Because we can't get to a sermon about unity and liberty and charity and all this beautiful stuff if we don't start with the framework, with the admission to ourselves that so much of the bullshit is not essential. It's not even near the top of that list. So let's start there with that inventory. what are some things that are not essential? Because part of the goal, what we're about, is trying to form a school of love as this community. And the hope is that we would become the kind of people who are honed and formed and focused and even disciplined around contributing to the very, very few things that are essential. And they work together. The more we clarify what is essential, the easier it is for us to be free of the things that are not essential. And to be free of those things is a matter of liberty. And I love the word liberty here, actually better than freedom, and I'll explain why. My first thought was because of the relationship between America and freedom, but I'll set that aside for now. I like liberty here because I think freedom carries with it, and maybe this is me, and I'll use I statements. For me, freedom can carry the connotation of the lack of restraint, or at times celebratory abuse. And so here's what I mean, and this is where we kind of get back to the reading. The idea of liberty here is not that we're free to do whatever we want then with the non-essentials. Like we define what the non-essentials are, and then with the non-essentials, liberty, meaning we're just free to do whatever we want, like a shopping spree of frivolity. But that's not the case. The twist is this. I think what's happening is we're being set free from, we're being liberated from the non-essentials. And the point of the quote then is we're not free to abuse them, right? Like the Bible says everything's permissible. How many hookers, how much blow, how much money, how many cars, this hedonistic merry-go-round, that's not the freedom we're talking about, right? Everything's permissible, so how much can I get? This freedom says some things matter and some things don't. Some things are essential and some things simply are not. So forget religion for a minute. Forget religion, forget woo-woo, forget angels, forget mystics and magical thinking, orthodoxy and heaven and the promise of whatever, and just answer this question. If all we were offering, like if you happen to tune into Collective Church tonight, if all we were offering was a way of life where you could see the essentials and the non-essentials clearly, and you could pick the essentials more often, and you could be free of the non-essentials more often, would that alone be worth it? Regardless of your objective beliefs, regardless of your theology, if what we were offering was a lens through which you could see the essentials and non-essentials in your life more clearly, and you could pick the essentials more frequently, and you could be free of the non-essentials, would that alone not be worth it? And I think most of us would say, yeah, that is. And that's why I think most of us, so many of us are still around. Some of us for years and years and years in this community still trying to figure this out because we think that's worth it. We come with all these beautiful traditions and this tapestry of theology and conviction and ideology and questions and doubts. And the way that comes together in the community it is a part of where we do the work of sorting out essentials and non-essentials, of wrestling with unity and charity. In the text that Heather shared, the thing that strikes me, and I just want to share sort of these two reflections, and then I'm going to invite Heather to kind of guide us into a moment of Eucharistic reflection. So this text, and the famous part of the text is everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And I like the way that this version of it reads. I have the right to do anything. Does this sound familiar? I have the right to do anything, or not to do anything, right? But not everything is beneficial. One of my mentors, Dan Jackson, this is a part of his philosophy for starting faith communities, for starting churches, for doing what we do. He talks about it in terms of low structure and high accountability. Low structure is everything is permissible, right? It's take the training wheels off, it's remove the barriers so that you have absolute freedom to create. Low structure, but it's got to be married with high accountability. It's got to be married with a clear sense of what our values are, what our convictions are, so that you're free to create within some kind of an ambition. In this case, it would be what is beneficial. And I think for me, this question of liberty and freedom, it seems all to come back to the question of individual versus communal. For me, the pinch point of freedom is whether or not that freedom is in service to my individual interests or whether that freedom is in service to a common good. And so my sense of this text is that really what's happening over the course of the reading is a call to exercise liberty for the sake of unity. Right? If you see it in the text, what they're talking about is the way that people's ritualistic meal purity might exclude some people from social connection around a dinner table. And what Paul says is, don't let those barriers divide you. What he's saying is exercise liberty for the sake of connecting with other people, right? It's not an invitation to march in the street because your individual personal interest isn't being represented. It's an invitation to make the need of the common good the purpose for which you exercise your liberty. And my question is, obviously, how are we seeing that differently than the way liberty is being used today? So what might it look like? I was thinking, what might it look like then for us as this school of love, as this community that's trying to form ourselves for this purpose? What does it look like for us to practice liberty in such a way that it contributes to the common good, that it makes us feel a sense of belonging and connection? How do we practice that? How does our liberty actually lead to unity, which goes back to what we talked about last week? That's where that comes from, is a group of people who choose to use their freedom for the sake of connecting, not dividing. This is a quick text just to wrap this up with practice, and that'll lead right into what Heather's going to share. There's this text in John 8 that says, to the Jews who had believed him. So these are Jews who are like converted to Jesus' message, but they're still Jews. So Jesus said to these Jews who had believed his message, he says, if you hold to my teaching, and you've got to hear it that way, right? Because this is a time where there's tons of competing teachings. There's competing teachings among rabbis, but there's also competing religions. There's competing ideologies. So Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, my interpretation of the law, then you really are my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I think very often we've been raised in this post-Enlightenment, modern, Western, sort of colonial perspective that says what we need to do is accumulate, right? And because the text starts out with talking about believing, then maybe we should accumulate the right belief. And Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, so we think he must be talking about beliefs. Let's believe these things in our head, and then then we'll know the truth in our brains, and the truth will set us free. To put this in the context, though, to be Jesus' disciple meant not to know what he knew, but to do what he did. Right. And so when he says, if you hold to my teaching, he's not saying if you've learned a comprehensive theological perspective. He's saying if you've followed me around in the desert, if you've practiced what I've practiced, if you've eaten with the people I've eaten with, if you've tried to help me heal the people I've tried to heal, if you've tried to confront power like I've confronted power, if you've actually done these things, then you'll know the truth, not in your brain, but you'll know it because you know it. You'll know it because you've practiced it. And I think it should be translated, the practice of the truth.
Right, because
will set you free.
Because he says the Jews who had believed him. So
exactly.
They already had the believing thing down.
Right, and he says
you've got to hold to my teaching.
Hold to the teaching. Yeah. So these are my reflections. There is no liberty without accountability. Right? There is no liberty without accountability. Otherwise, that's just selfishness. Liberty without accountability is selfishness. And look, not to say, we all bought the lie. We've all bought hook, line, and sinker into capitalism, which has told us our entire lives selfishness will lead to selflessness. That selfish consumption will lead to altruism. We've called bullshit. We know it doesn't work. We're proposing some alternative solutions, starting with this school of love. But first and foremost, there is no liberty without accountability, because it cannot be about an individual. It has to be about the common good. In community, our individual freedom has to be subject to the common good, or we would say the group conscience, the heartbeat of the school of love, however we want to say that. And then finally, there is no liberty without practice. It's like love. That liberty can't be something we talk about, like this neat idea that we're aspiring to. It's like Yoda. It either is or isn't in our practice. Do or do not, there is no try. So liberty's evidenced in how we practice this. Heather, share with us.
Okay.
Wherever that leads.
So I'm going to share why I think for so many of us, we're incapable of doing that right now. I think we're capable of learning how to do that. I think that this is an ongoing journey. As Peter Rollins often says in his speeches, we don't know what the end is, we just know what the journey is.
Yeah.
So no one shall be turned away. No one shall be turned away. So I've struggled in this aspect of faith with Collective over the last few months, with the divisiveness that we've seen, both in this community and in the country at large. And during my time at Collective, I've had many discussions on the absolute meaning of this statement of our faith. Should we really turn no one away? What about the child molester? What about the person with the gun, the abuser, the rapist, the unrepentant, the one who wants to divide our fellowship? These are not easy questions to answer. Jesus calls us to turn the other cheek, and he opines that he that is without sin should cast the first stone. Jesus tells us to love our enemies, but also to treat others as we would want to be treated. This poses some paradoxes for me. What happens when the harm is done to someone we love? I would like my friends to protect me from harm if they're able. So then should I protect those who I love? And what if protecting those I love from harm does harm to others? If Jesus' words are absolute, then I cannot do both, and I'm compelled to disobey one or the other teaching. During the process of healing from abuse, we're often challenged by the idea of forgiveness. Are we really called to forgive those that do us harm? The act of forgiveness itself can be further abuse. The abuser may see a license to continue. Those in the healing professions are quick to remind the injured that their forgiveness is not required. The requirement by others to forgive the abuser is itself an injury, one that the church has perpetrated on its congregants, particularly women, over the centuries. Thankfully, all but the most conservative and fundamentalist wings of Christianity no longer hold the view that a woman should subject herself to the authority of an abusive husband. No one but the victim has the right to forgive. Those that apply pressure to forgive, even with the best of motives, are contributing to the abuse. Forgiveness can be cathartic, but only when it comes from the peace and grace of the victim alone. If we want others to forgive, we must first provide the unconditional, non-judgmental support and love. This political season has opened many wounds that will take time to heal and may, in fact, never heal completely. People on both sides feel hurt and betrayed. Many, are calling for unity, to move beyond the division and focus on those things that bring us together, while others remain staunchly opposed to the other. As Christians, we are taught to forgive and come together to the table. We are also taught to stand our ground and fight for the oppressed and the downtrodden. Is it even possible to do both? How could we hold our abused and marginalized brothers and sisters in the light of Christ and at the same time invite their abusers unconditionally to the table? Seems that we cannot. Even Christ himself at the cross, fully human and fully divine, called out to God for forsaking him. Christ, who said that the greatest of all laws was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, cried out in the pain of abandonment. There's a doctrine in some parts of our faith, in some parts of the Christian faith, of original sin. The idea, in very simplistic terms, and I'm not a scholar of Catholicism, but basically that mankind sinned in the Garden of Eden, and that we as humans carry the burden of that sin for eternity. Only by communion in Christ and his death on the cross can that sin be washed away. That doctrine has worked well to control a simplistic population for centuries, and I challenge that doctrine. It's my belief that original sin is a metaphor for the complexities of life. It is impossible for us as a society to stand for our values without harming others. We cannot serve without harm, or at least we haven't learned yet how to do so. I personally am a liberal Democrat with a capital D. I believe that our society is best served, and these are my beliefs. These are not the beliefs of the church or anybody else here. These are just my beliefs. I believe that our society is best served by equitable distribution of wealth, taxing the very rich to help the downtrodden. I believe that policies that demonize people for their sexuality and gender identity is a moral outrage with deadly consequences. I believe the richest society on earth can afford to, and has the obligation to, ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all its citizens. I believe that our society cannot survive without dramatically changing our effect on our climate and on our ecosystem. But I also believe that people will also be harmed by these policies. Addressing climate change is going to hurt some people, at least in the short term. People whose livelihoods rely on fossil fuels are going to lose that livelihood. Sure, in the long term, the benefits, I believe, will outweigh the costs, but that's cold comfort for the family who loses their home in the meantime while we struggle to renew our way of doing economics. A higher minimum wage. A higher minimum wage may well mean that at least some people are going to lose jobs in the short term until things balance out, but people still need to eat and pay the rent in the short term. I believe we must maintain a safety net for our poorest families. Christ demands it, in fact. But for some, that very safety net will be the thing that traps them in poverty. Despite my belief in liberal economics as the only long-term solution for our society, our benevolence is not without consequences. We are thus compelled to sin, to do harm, not because Eve ate an apple, but because we cannot yet do good without doing at least some harm. I believe we will eventually figure it out. In that I have faith. We will figure it out together and with the help of God. It will continue to be painful for some, and some will fall by the wayside. And I'm sure we will get it wrong many more times before we get it right. We may never get it right, but we will keep trying. So no, I might not be ready to forgive those who have used their political voice to demonize my existence and who still stand by their hate. I may not be ready to forgive those whose message is fear of people of color, fear of immigrants, fear of the poor, fear of the different. I'm not ready to forgive those who worship money as king and hide it behind Christ. I ask not that I be forgiven my sins as I forgive those that have sinned against me, but I ask that we will continue to be guided along the path where that one day will be possible in grace and peace. This table is set for all people. I will come to this table with my arms wide and share this meal with any and all that choose to share it with me.
Thank you. Amen.
Do it all, everything Those three words are said too much, not enough. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? Get what we're told before we grow too old. Show me a garden that's bursting into life. Let's waste time chasing cars around our heads. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? Get what we're told before we grow too old. Show me a garden that's bursting into life. All that I am, all that I ever was, searing your perfect eyes, you're all I can see. I don't know where, confused about as well. Just know that these things never change for us at all. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world?
Oh, man, what a night. Thank you. I hope that you have questions and thoughts. I hope that you've got things that you want to share with Heather. I hope that you've got questions to ask Heather. I hope that we're going to have a great conversation. If you want to join us on Zoom, we're going to head over there right now and continue this conversation. We say often the sermon is the first word, and the real transformation happens in all these words that follow. So come on over to the community part of this faith community. Thanks for joining us for this liturgy. If you want to be connected to what's going on, sign up for the weekly. You can also give. We're in a season, just to put it plainly, because why beat around the bush anymore? The economy's in the tank. Jess left a little while ago because there was no prayer to afford 2 full-time employees. We currently can't afford me as 1 full-time employee. So if you're interested in what we're doing, if you think it's important, we're in conversations with the Methodist Church. We're talking about how we're going to try to keep this thing going. But if it's important, we really hope that you'll give to support it. That's how we keep this thing happening. So you can do that at wearecollectivechurch.com. You can give at collectivegives.com. If you want to get to know us a bit better, again, jump on the Zoom. Come on over now. We're going to have some conversation. You can also check out the Facebook. You can sign up for the weekly email on the website. I will try and get an email out this week, or you can email us at info@wearecollectivechurch.com. Thanks again for being with us online tonight. Your presence does make us who we are. You all too, thanks. Your presence makes us who we are. This has really been a great night. Our benediction tonight is from the Pope. He says, "Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We're all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you." A rule of nature. What does that say to us about liberty? Rivers don't drink their own water. Trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun doesn't shine on itself. Flowers don't spread, not for themselves, but for others. Let's bring our hands together as a symbol of our intention. First, to our heads for clarity of thought, then to our lips for clarity of speech, to our hearts for clarity of action, so that in all that we say and do, love would be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace. We'll see you on the Zoom.